intro, right? Good evening. And before I read for you, I first of all want to thank Norman for inviting me. First of all, he invited me. Then I got a second call saying, oh, by the way, I want you to read first. Okay, all right. As Norman mentioned, I'm one of the partners for Spotlight on Jazz and Poetry. And what we've done since 2008 is we have an online radio show where we feature up-and-coming, new, on the cusp, and established jazz musicians and poets. And what we do is we try to marry a poet with a jazz musician. And we do that for each show. And right now, as Norman said, we're featuring Norman on our website. As a matter of fact, this is the last night we're featuring his show. We feature each artist for 2 weeks. So if you get the opportunity, the website is www.sojpradio.com. And if you check it out, please do. And if you don't get a chance to go on tonight, they're all archived on the website, so you'll be able to listen to it anyway. So in trying to determine which piece I was going to read for you tonight, I wanted it to be something relevant to what's going on with Norman and what he's trying to do. And one of the things that I always think about with fellow poets is that what we do is, I consider poets superheroes. I consider any artist a superhero, because what we do is we take our innermost, personal, private, innate feelings and expressions, and we share them with the world. And sometimes that can be pretty daunting. It can also be pretty scary sometimes, because a lot of times we start out writing or creating one thing and it turns and it morphs itself into something else. And generally how it's received depends on the conditions of the moment. So this piece that I'm going to read for you is titled Conditions. When we mix societal tradition with our own ambitions and our overgrown suppositions and unknown apparitions, we find ourselves subject to conditions. Conditions, spelled out as C, not S-double-E, but conditions called upon cooperatively, claiming that we must collaborate compromisingly, quid pro quo, you today, me tomorrow, as if us two or you or we or maybe just me today could be the way. But according to C conditionally, that cannot be, because the condition of this world, this country, this state, this place, this time, this space won't let people see beyond the face, beyond the skin they're in, beyond the car, the house, the block they're in. So they lock them in and the conditions begin. But then there's the condition of O, as in only upon, only in, only if, only when. Snobbish convictions that compel an eye to only familiar beauty. Soul sight willfully blinded in obsessive duty, overlooking new fruit dangled in wild chance trees, falling rotten and mangled in betrayal weeds. To feed a common tongue, amazing truths, salty sweet. Words licking in curious languages with addictive heat, as chills ride each capillary path beneath stubborn weathered skin, stirring libidos frozen thick with boredom lingering within. Conditions. But then there's in, not new or novelty like neighbors or necessarily necessity, but nakedly and painstakingly a needful nuisance that needles and numbs you from your neck to your knees with unsolicited niceties, that taste of nuts or nails that puncture your dreams, then sag and drag into nightmare screams, because your condition has convinced you that your imagination is just a figment of your life. And somebody somewhere told you that anything less than strife is a mental condition, a head trip, an immature blip that slipped from the playful tip of your idealistic lips. A narcissistic script that you wrote through you, to you, and was too true and do you. And for those who don't view you as you do, and never knew you like you do, you say, screw you. Because your present condition is between you and you. Conditions. But then there's D, the deeds of disappointment doing double-time deceptions, that we devise and design from dung, masquerading as diplomatic dialogue that drives distance between duos and destines dualities to demise from disguised fatalities. Conditions. And of course, there's an I, that sound of solo, singular subjectivity, a unique proclivity to overlook that massive beam embedded deep in your objectivity, but leaving you with the sensitivity to aggressively and expressively detect the activity of a speck, a stain, a microscopic grain floating in the lens of someone else's eye. But why? Do we obsess, digress, and all but bless foreign eyes, while we stress and suppress and rarely confess the condition of our own respective mess? Conditions. But let's not forget about T, that tough and tender, tight and tried, torn and tied, and finally laid to the side testament known as truth. Raw realities that grow into tall tales that twist and turn our tongues, then backfire and burn our lungs, leaving scars on each part of our hearts, where each uttered lies stung, because we're in that condition of self-preservation, uncomfortable confrontation, embarrassing trepidation, insurmountable tribulation, overwhelming temptation, and unjust victimization, forcing humanity into deeper damnation. Conditions. And then there's another I to cover all the incoherent, indecent, immature, and insecure idlings that infest your imagination and induce you to idolize your own idiosyncrasies like illogical inbreeding of an infested intellect. Fool's folly folded in infinite formations. Inexplicable inflammations of internal illustrations leading to inevitable isolation, consequentially and exponentially finding one to look foolish from every side. Conditions. Leading us to, oh please, oh why, oh yes, oh my, oh really, oh great, okay, oh give me a break, oh snap, oh hell, oh sure, oh well. All overstated orations of obvious occasions offered overtly in obnoxious obligation. Conditions. But alas, there's N, that gnawing need to network and negotiate a saving grace for me and you and you and you and you too and every face in this time and in this space. If we could just stop trying to run and simply walk in this human race, respecting each other's pace, we just might salvage a trace of a favorable disposition of our conditions. Thank you.